Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today as we walk through the Artificial Intelligence Quad Cam. So for today's webinar, we're going to cover quite a few things. Let's go to the next slide and take a look at today's agenda before we get started. All right. We're going to cover a few of the housekeeping items, and that's just to make sure that you guys do have access and that you can hear us during the course of today's webinar. We're going to introduce today's speaker. We're also going to talk about how cameras overall can help today's fleet stay safer. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the artificial intelligence quad camera. That actually means 4 lenses, so it's pretty cool how it all works together. We'll take a look at that. We're also going to look at how cameras can help to build a positive driving culture across fleets. And then we're going to take a look at cameras, their role in safety, and also the return on investment for the cameras. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide for housekeeping, please. Today's webinar will be recorded, and we'll be sending that out to you shortly after today's webinar has ended. But please note that if you're able to see us, but you can't hear us during today's webinar, go ahead into the gray GoToWebinar control box on the right-hand side of your computer, most likely, and select computer audio to use the voice over IP function. Or if you're not getting good quality reception that way, you can always select the phone call, and this will still let you view the slides as we go through them, and also dial in directly via phone to get today's webinar information. If you have any questions at all during today's webinar, please go ahead and look at the very bottom of your GoToWebinar gray panel. There's a chat function in there. Go ahead and type in any of your questions, and what we'll do is once we get through today's webinar, we did save time for questions, so we'll work through as many questions as possible. If we don't get to your questions during today's webinar, we'll respond to you offline and send that out to you later. All right, so with that started, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to today's speaker, who is Marco Encinas. Marco, it's yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marco Encinas. I'm the Senior Product Manager, Global Platforms for Teletrac DevMan. I've been in the industry for a little over 10 years now, working for several different companies in the geospatial industry. As far as what I do here specifically at Teletrac DevMan, I oversee the global platforms, including the mobile applications and our in-cab solutions. I've have a background in the mobile space as well as the GPS space, and always looking at what other regions in the world are doing and seeing how the different offerings that either they offer or we offer can help improve the overall functionality and features that we provide to our customers. Today we're going to be talking about our AI quad camera, which is our next evolution in our camera product library. This is one of the most advanced cameras out in the market. This camera actually has a really advanced processing power built into it. It actually learns and processes real information in real time, whether it's driver behavior or analyzing the surroundings of what it's recording, basically not just in cab, but also externally. Through the edge computing that is built into the hardware, as well as utilizing the high-grade optics that it uses. Those camera lenses are very advanced. It has infrared technology, which means that it can record video in HD quality resolution, even in low light conditions. So sometimes at night, if you replay some of those video events, you'll see that there may be a reddish or pinkish tint to the video. That's just the low light sensitivity sensors being turned on. And what that really does is really clears up the video, and it allows you to really view what's going on the outside very clearly. The other thing that the camera does is it has a pretty sizable amount of memory on board, which means that it can record between 70 to 100 hours of video recording time. What that actually does, or what that does for you, is it allows you to go back and retrieve video off the camera that's sitting on board that wasn't necessarily triggered by any kind of event. So for example, if you want to go back and extract a video sample from a specific day between a specific time, you're able to do that based on the storage that's already built into the camera. The camera's AI technology is not only tracking your risky driving behavior, whether it's severe, moderate, or mild, but it's also tracking the full-time driving amount of or minutes that you're doing. And it's comparing that, not just the bad driving behavior, but it's also associating the good driving behavior to your overall score. The reason why you want to do that is you want to make sure that when you're comparing your drivers, everybody's being compared on an even playing field. For example, a driver that's driven an hour a week and has 2 incidents is not the same when you're comparing it to a driver that's driven 10 hours and has 2 incidents. Comparing driver to driver, that's just not the same. The other thing that this does is it associates driver star scores, which means that while it's analyzing bad driving behavior and bad habits, it's also associating good driving behavior and good habits, such as giving you a bonus score or positive score for when a driver maybe cuts you off and you let off the gas and essentially create that space in between yourself and that car in front of you. That's associated to good driving behavior, which means you get a positive score for that. So while it's doing not just tracking your bad habits and maybe some of those events that you don't want to be driving with, it's also associating the good parts, because this shouldn't be a punitive system. It should be a way to improve driver behavior and correct those bad driving habits. The AI quad camera, as I mentioned before, it has an actual artificial intelligence machine built into the system that it's recording and processing all in real time. As those events are triggered, the camera actually pushes those events out to the cloud and onto the UI platform, which at that point, either the safety manager or whoever in your business is actually has access to view those events, is able to go then and retrieve them close to real time. Depending on cellular connectivity and network strength, within minutes of the event happening, you'll have access to it to be able to view it and see what is actually happening. Now, those are all the driving behaviors or the driving habits that are being driven by those events, but it's also basically creating a library of events to create coaching for positive reinforcements. So you can associate coaching tips and events for those drivers, so that when they do make when they do create a violation, you can associate a coaching tip that's automatically sent to that driver saying, hey, you turned this corner a little too hard. Here's ways to sort of avoid that, and it takes them to positive coaching reinforcement. The other thing that the camera also does is on the in-cab facing camera is it also has facial recognition capabilities. So if you ever want to be able to identify the drivers as they're jumping in, the camera, when the feature is enabled, has the ability to read the driver's facial features and associate that with a specific driver based on the driver ID created. That does take a little bit of time of when it's enabled versus when it's fully functioning. And fully functioning meaning that when it's actually identifying the driver with the correct driver ID created. And the only reason why it takes some time is because it has to recognize every angle, every facial feature in order to associate it to the right driver. Now, what does this really mean for you and the drivers is, through all this technology and the real-time recording, is it really to help keep the driver and the community where the driver is driving in safer, right? It's reducing the risk of driver distraction, creating, enforcing positive driver behavior and positive driving habits. And because it's recording every minute and analyzing everything in real time, those alerts are always constantly coming in order for the safety manager or the dispatcher to really create those positive driving or coaching sessions with the drivers. And because it's recording everything in real time and storing it locally, Again, as I mentioned earlier, it does support 70 to 100 hours of searchable video on board. Some of the other providers in the market, they provide up to 40 hours of event type recordings, which means it's not recording every minute. While the video is playing, it only saves the pieces of the video where an event happened, versus our system really just records full time, and it uploads automatically whenever an event occurs, but the actual video footage for the last 70 to 100 hours or so is stored locally for you to access at any time that you need it. Now, as I mentioned before, a camera system shouldn't be used for punitive reasons. It's really about coaching and correcting bad driver behavior and building positive driver skills. Why do you want to do that? Again, it leads to driver retention. It also leads to, obviously, safer driving behind the wheel and safer driving of assets that have your company logo on it. Nobody wants to be the Walmart or the FedEx truck that plows behind, a stopped vehicle. This is a way to start to head in the direction of deterring that type of behavior. So what is AI, and what does it do, and how does it relate to cameras? AI is artificial intelligence. Basically, is the machine is constantly learning. So as an example, on the inward facing camera, if it detects a seatbelt violation because maybe the driver doesn't wear the shoulder strap doesn't fall in the right place where the camera's looking for it, as that driver puts a seatbelt on every day and the camera starts noticing that seatbelt is not necessarily in the place where it's supposed to be, but maybe slightly off center, it starts learning that. Once it learns that shortly after a few attempts, then it'll start associating with, oh, the seatbelt's not where I'm looking for it. Normally, it's on the other place, and it stops creating those violations because now it's looking for that seatbelt where it's appearing for that specific driver. Now, what this means for cameras with AR and the recording events, again, because it's automatically recording and it's analyzing and using the artificial intelligence system that's built into the system, it's also, interpreting what's going on the outside of the vehicle. As mentioned before, the driving distance between yourself and the vehicle in front of you or the vehicles around you is determining whether you're in the right or you're in the wrong. For example, if a driver cuts off in front of you and just gets in front of your lane, it'll automatically detect that you're driving too close, but it's not your fault. It's the driver in front of you that cut you off. Now, if you continue at that same unsafe distance, it'll trigger an unsafe distance violation. But if you allow that driver to, create that space by taking your foot off the gas pedal, then it'll associate that with good driving behavior because you created that positive space through good driving habits. For this slide, I'm going to show you a video sample of what this actually means. For example, it not only does the driving distance of a vehicle, but it's also reading the the road signs around you. So it's reading the speed signs, it's reading the stop signs, it's reading the no U-turn signs that are often on the road. So once it reads those, it knows that those are things that the driver shouldn't be doing. It shouldn't be going above the specific speed limit on the posted speeds on that specific street that has that specific posted speed. It shouldn't be, it should be stopping for a stop sign that it picks up on the side of the sidewalk. And the vehicle shouldn't be making a U-turn on a street where there's a no U-turn sign on. Let me go ahead and put this video up on the screen.
So Marco, as you prepare to share the video with us, I just want to let everyone know Just keep an eye as you're looking at the video Marco's going to show us here. It's a low light situation. And because the license plate of the vehicle in front is so clear, you'll notice we had to put a black box around it. But just a heads up, it is very, very clear. So what you're seeing, that black box, is something we did just to protect the identity of the vehicle in front. The one to the side, obviously, we obscured a little bit as well. But just notice the clarity. This is actually a very, very foggy condition. So Marco, go ahead and trigger that fun video.
So Tracy takes you to those videos. You can see it's nighttime. You can see the cars coming on the opposite side. You see the different squares. Those different squares is a camera actually analyzing the different elements in its environment and what it's reading. If you look at there's a red square on the upper left-hand corner, which is signaling that's a red light. The green squares around the green lights is detecting that those signal lights are those colors and they're okay for you to cross that intersection. And if you look at the no U-turn signals, there's a square around that because it's reading and saying that there is no U-turn ability here. As a driver starts going and creates that U-turn, if you look at the top of the video screen, it says detected U-turn at no U-turn sign. At this point, the driver has been flagged for a U-turn violation based on the camera's ability to read that that driver shouldn't have made that U-turn there at that intersection. So this is what these artificial cameras and the artificial system brings to the table when it comes to recording in-cab driver behavior and in-cab driver events. Is it not only does whatever it's been programmed to do, but it's learning about its environments and really picking up things that normal cameras wouldn't pick up. There was a recent study done by a company called Netrodyne, which is the camera provider, where it went out and asked several questions. It basically did a survey in the market, and it came back with 69% of commercial drivers are interested in AI technology, but more so because it helps them monitor things that they aren't necessarily always aware of, and essentially has their back in correcting that behavior, but also in protecting them, right? Because if you're driving down the road and somebody changes lanes right in front of you, then slams on their brakes, the camera is there to capture that behavior and exonerating that driver of that vehicle that now has just slammed into the back of that vehicle that cut him off, which otherwise could possibly go completely wrong. And usually the at-fault driver is going to end up being the commercial driver if there's no video evidence. So as we're progressing now into the future, these camera solutions are becoming more and more in demand, and drivers are getting more comfortable with the technology being in the cab, because it's not just about punishing them for bad driver behavior, but it's really about their protection, and then also correcting some of those bad behaviors that they might have developed over time. So how can the cameras keep the fleet safer, right? Distracted driving, looking at your phone, video chatting, that's becoming probably one of the bigger problems, not only for commercial drivers, but just drivers in general. Is, a text comes in or a phone call comes in, everybody just goes, grabs their phone and starts to read it. That takes your eyes off the road, right? That's distracted driving. Based on a survey or a study done by the National Safety Council, there's more than 700 people that are injured by distracted driving because of crashes. That all started because they were either they went to go grab their phone, they looked down and grabbed something, they might have fallen down, those types of things that we shouldn't be doing while we're operating a vehicle. The other things that lead to these accidents and incidents really is things such as, driving while fatigued. The camera and its advanced technology is not only looking at, are your eyes off the road and looking at texting, or are you talking on the phone? It's also looking at, is your driver fatigued? Are you yawning? Right? If it detects a yawn, it'll create an alert that goes back to your dispatcher safety manager, and then that safety manager maybe can then at that point contact the driver and say, hey, either pull over, maybe take a rest. I see that you're a little tired, or be able to manage that situation a little bit better rather than that driver continuing on the road while they're drowsy and possibly leading to an accident because maybe they fall asleep behind the wheel. The other things that cameras help with fleets is the lack of safety culture. Really, this improves or strengthens the safety culture within a company or a fleet. And it's also for vehicle maintenance, right? Vehicle maintenance leads to a lot of issues with being safe on the road. And again, that same study from Netrodyne in 2020 basically found that 81% of driver distractions, 81% of people believe that those driver distractions on the rise, that's not just the Netrodyne scheduled or study, but that's an overall belief from the everybody that studied driver behavior. What's the leading cause is text messaging, phone calls, but also social media usage, surfing the internet. Maybe you think that because you're in traffic, you can go ahead and surf the internet. A lot of times that leads to you just not being aware of what's going on, and you end up rear-ending somebody. And then what that ends up happening is, as you can see here, 22% of commercial vehicle drivers have been injured because of a distracted driving incident, whether that's their own fault or another vehicle's fault who wasn't paying attention to what they were doing. The overall problem here is really the distracted driver. On the camera technology side, really there's the human versus machine review. There's some providers out there that only provide human review, which means that the camera that, while it's recording, is sending that feed to a call center where they're monitoring the events live. What that really means is that you don't get the real-time events. You don't get the analyzing in real time. Somebody has to watch that feed and determine whether that's an issue or not, and then create the alert and send that out, which is usually a delay between 8 to 12, sometimes 24 hours. Well, sometimes that may be too late. For example, in the event of a drowsy driver, 4, 8, 12 hours later, that's way too late to let me know that my driver is driving a vehicle while drowsy or tired, right? I need to know that immediately so I can contact that driver and figure out a way to either get them off the road so that they can take a rest, or figure out when, how far away they are from their next stop, or maybe from their shift ending, to make sure they get off the road and get some rest. The other piece that how this continues to manage your fleet's safety and continues to monitor your driver's overall safety is when you incorporate camera technology and artificial intelligence and the recording of essentially every minute of the day. What this really does is it allows the driver to feel comfortable behind the wheel, knowing that if something happens that's not necessarily their fault, there's technology that's watching them or watching out for them to help them, in the event of something happening that they need to exonerate themselves from. The other piece is this also starts creating positive driving culture, because now the driver is aware that, taking a turn at an excessive speed will, essentially trigger an event, or speeding above the posted speed limit, or following too closely. Those types of driving behaviors are now ingrained in the driver, that those are being monitored, and they start correcting those. But it's also making the driver aware that positive driving behaviors are also being monitored and analyzed, and they are actually being awarded for positive driving behavior, creating that safe distance between them and the vehicle in front of them, or being able to stop in time for a pedestrian that crosses out in the middle of the street. Those types of things are things that are awarded positive points rather than negative points. What a camera system does to you is, if you incorporate that with the driver coaching, whether it's the safety or fleet manager does the coaching themselves, or they use technology to do the coaching for them, such as our platform, you're able to enhance and provide that positive driver reinforcement and really corrective action. For example, in our system, we have the driver star and green zone program, which means that when drivers create a positive action, they're awarded driver stars, which means it's positive points. Green zone program means that it's not just monitoring the bad driver behavior moments, but it's also monitoring the positive driver behavior, so that you're awarded for the good driving you did, not just the bad. Right? The real-time notifications, the managers are able to automatically assign a coaching session for the specific driving events that were triggered off that camera, so that the driver through their app can get those coaching moments or coaching notifications right then and there. And whenever they pull over at the end of the day, or they may pull in the rest stop, they're able to view those coaching sessions on their spare time. So I'm going to take you through a couple of videos here to show you what I mean by positive driver reinforcement through good driver behavior. For example, a driver star being awarded because that driver created that safe driving distance between themselves and that vehicle in front of them. As you see here, this driver in the right-hand lane, these squares here tell the camera is essentially reading its environment, right? You see these numbers associated at the top of the box. That's the number of seconds it's going to take before possible impact if an event should occur. So right now, between the distance between the camera of the vehicle that's being driven and this vehicle in the left-hand lane, if that vehicle comes over in front of me right now, it's going to take 0.3 seconds before there's an impact if that driver slams on its brakes. As we move forward here, the vehicle comes into the front of the lane and essentially cuts me off. And because of that, the driver lets off the gas pedal. And as you see here, there's a star here awarded. That means that the driver was awarded positive points for that behavior, essentially allowing that driver to create the space between yourself and that vehicle in front of you. Again, that's good driver behavior. That's positive driver awareness, and it's also recorded as a good coaching, a positive coaching reinforcement. I'm going to show you another video here where a driver is going through streets, and it actually has two stop sign violations. One where the vehicle essentially didn't stop. I mean, it barely got under 10 miles an hour when it just rolled right through that stop sign. And then as it approaches another intersection, it actually rolls through the stop sign. So it detects both not stopping for a stop sign and also rolling through it. As we approach this next intersection, as you can see here, the stop sign's over on the right. It highlights it, it notes it's there. The driver goes about 5 miles an hour and then just rolls right through it. It never makes a complete stop. These are all things that the camera is processing all in real time and sending back up as an alert to the safety manager or whoever's reviewing these events. I also want to go ahead and take a minute here and show you guys what the user interface is when it comes to essentially the scorecarding, right? These are all the different events that happened within the last month. You'll have here your driver scores or driver stars associated with positive driving enforcement. The total events of following too closely, harsh braking, acceleration, harsh turning, any kind of red light violations, things like that. So this is all tallied and scored upon, and each driver would have its own tallies of events that happened, positive or negative, and then it would be able to issue you a score based on your driver. And here, if you look at the minutes analyzed, this is a percentage of green minutes, right? So the total minutes driven behind the wheel is 463. Of that, 89% was positive driving. If you look down here, 1,273 minutes of total driver behind the wheel recording. 80% of that was positive. So again, as we record full time, we're also analyzing the positive and giving you a percentage of that, so you're able to better compare your drivers to each other. So what does that type of scoring and scorecard do for you? It builds you, it essentially helps you build that positive driving culture. As you saw, you can reward drivers rather than penalize them, right? They're rewarded for good driving behavior that the camera actually is analyzing. You're not only having those conversations of you did this wrong and you did that wrong, but now you're actually having positive conversations with those drivers of, hey, you know, the cameras caught you creating that space between yourself and that vehicle, or you were able to safely stop because of a pedestrian crossing in front of you because you were following the speed limit and you were obeying the road laws. Those types of positive type of reinforcement type of discussions are lead to better drivers and lead to driver retention, because now the drivers feel that it's not just punitive, it's not just a bad conversation every time, it's going to be a good conversation, right? It's about the positive things you did, not just the bad things. We have had the system out for some time now, and we do have some actual case studies of some of our customers that provided some feedback, of actual improvements in their driver behavior. For example, one of our customers, the St. Logistics, they reported back, 50% reduction in hard braking alerts, which means drivers are now operating those vehicles at a safer speed that essentially stops them from having to slam on their brakes to stop. Right? Their seatbelt compliance is 45 went reduced by 45%, which means that the drivers are now aware that they should be wearing their seatbelt for safety. Uh, the risky following distance, 38% reduction in that metric. And what happens is when these systems are installed, what we generally advise our customers to do is install them, let them run for about a month. Don't talk to the drivers about anything. Just let them drive as they normally drive, because that essentially gives you that baseline for where you want to start off. How many of those events were triggered before those conversations started happening, before they knew that this is all the technology and everything that the camera is doing in real time. Then you're able to really track the progress and improvement of your drivers and your fleet. One of our other customers, Vascor Transport, they had an 85% improvement in speeding violations. 85%. That is a huge improvement, where drivers are now operating those vehicles safely and at the speed limit. 48% improvement in the unsafe driving basic score, which means that drivers are now 48% of those drivers have improved their safety score in a positive way, which means that they're driving better. And then an average 72-point improvement on the green zone score, which means, again, green zone score means is positive driving behavior. That means that they are doing things on the road that are positive, right? They're creating that safe distance. They're stopping with the correct amount of distance between themselves and the event that is occurring in front of them. These are things that overall, from a safety perspective for a fleet, are amazing. And you can take this type of information back to your insurance and say, hey, what can we do about our rates? Can we reduce them? Look, here are the improvements. This is the technology we are using in our fleets. And now you can have those discussions about not just my fleet is being operated safely on the road, but now I'm also reducing my operational costs because of the technology and because of the improvement of these drivers. As I mentioned, the insurance piece, but also it's protecting your brand and your reputation, right? You don't want to have that your logo on the 6 o'clock news. Being able to protect your drivers and protect your brand while you're on the road is how you stay in business, and also how you do more business, because a lot of companies are now starting to look at those scores and and seeing your accident seeing your accident history and determining whether they want to do business with you. Being able to be able to get ahead of it and really through technology create better, safer drivers is actually going to probably award you some business. And it's also a protection against counterfeit claims and insurance fraud, right? There's a lot of times when the people out there that are trying to make a quick buck will target a commercial vehicle because they think, well, most of the time they're gonna, law enforcement is gonna side with my side and blame the commercial vehicle driver. So again, the type of insurance with one claim that goes against you as a company that'll more than pay for this service alone. Now we have a couple different camera options. If you're interested in learning more about the technology and maybe getting not only a demo but maybe even a trial, you can contact us and reach out either to your current account executive, if you're a current customer, or if you're a new customer, just reach out to us. We'll be happy to walk you through the technology. Some of the external sources that we used are, National Safety Council Distracted Driving Study, a fleet maintenance checklist for reduction in insurance costs from Wade Millard, study done in 2020, and then selecting the best dash cam for your fleet, just for references. That concludes the presentation for today around our AI quad cam. Thank you for coming in and participating in this webinar.
Awesome. Thank you, Marco. I appreciate that. So now we'll go ahead and we'll take a few questions as they've been coming in during the webinar. Marco, why don't I just throw one to kind of let you get started with? One of the ones that came in was, can the camera be utilized almost like a walkie-talkie so that a fleet manager or safety manager can communicate with the driver directly?
No, I cannot. The camera will alert the driver of an event or of driving a little too fast for that environment. It will alert them and will tell them, hey, slow down, or things like that. But the dispatcher cannot communicate directly through the camera.
Perfect. Okay. Another question that came in. So the viewer understands that the camera is recording every minute, but let's say, for example, that the vehicle was, at a stop sign or just kind of, getting started, and they see something unfold in front of them, and they just want to make sure. Can the driver themselves actually trigger a video?
Yes, the camera actually has buttons right underneath it that at any point in time the driver can hit that button to record that event of what's going on. The dispatcher will then be alerted, and the dispatcher can download that segment of video as is, or it can request a larger sample of that video based on that event, that button push that the driver initiated.
Okay, great. And I've got another question here from a viewer who, based on sort of their company culture, they like the idea of the quad camera since it's capturing 4 different views, but their concern is that they want if we have the option to let them actually cover the driver-facing camera lenses. Is that an option?
Yes. So there's you can actually buy a physical cover for the in-cab facing camera, or you can put it in basically privacy mode, and through a push of a button, you can turn off the internal facing camera.
Perfect. Okay, great. That's kind of the first group of questions that I've seen so far here come across. I don't see any other ones. Thomas, I don't know if you see any other ones in the queue that maybe I can't see at the moment, but it looks like that's all I've gotten so far.
Let's take a look here. Here's one. Is there an option for a dual facing camera so it's possible to not only see the road but the driver as well?
So this camera that we're talking about today is the quad camera, which means obviously 4, so with the 4 lenses. But the dual camera is something that we'll be able to kind of share some information on in the coming months. We don't have anything right now on that. Dual obviously would be reduced number of camera lenses, just having 2. So yeah, we can actually send out some future information about that.
Gotcha.
Perfect. Okay. I think we're good in the queue unless there's anyone else. If you've got any question that you thought about, please go ahead and feel free to text that in. Otherwise, once we complete the recording, we'll send that to everyone. And you'll notice that there are actually some active links to some of the external sources, as well as some information. We've included a guide on selecting the best dash cam for your fleet. Really up to you and your business in terms of what you're looking for, and there's a lot of different options out there. So we appreciate everyone taking the time to spend a little bit of time with us learning about the AI Quad dash cam. I'd like to thank Marco Encinas for walking us through the camera today. It's been very helpful. And again, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You'll get the recording, and that will basically kind of give you a little bit of an email chain. So feel free to let us know what questions you may have thought about either after the webinar or at any point in the future. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate your time and hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you.